up, guys? I had a student back in the 90s and I was teaching them modes, and he asked me, Ricky, you know these modes, they all have these weird names. Do pentatonic boxes have weird names too? And I thought, it actually makes sense that they would have. So really, when somebody calls a mode Ionian, we can think of it as major, or we can think of Aeolian as minor, so why not the pentatonics as well? For me, however, the thing is, when I think of modes, I think of their scale formula. And because pentatonics have scale formulas, I can associate specific chords to those scale formulas as well. Really, this is my way of interpreting those scale formulas into pentatonic modes. You may have heard other names, but this is what makes sense to me. And what this does is it unlocks a new way of thinking of how these 5 pentatonic boxes that we get fit on top of chords. First, I'll show you the idea of how we modify a major scale into 2 different scale formulas to give you the gist, and then we'll get into the pentatonics. You can generally understand what a mode is by its DNA. Now, what do I mean by its DNA? This is why it's important to know your scale formulas. There we have the major scale formula. You can see it goes root, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh. Now, it would be simple for me to just change this into Lydian by sharpening the fourth. Let me do that again. Root, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh. Let me flatten the seventh there. That equals Mixolydian. So now we get a different mode. This one was Lydian. This formula here is going to help us to understand what to call the thing. And I had somebody ask me a question, do the pentatonics have mode names? Yes, they do. And there's all sorts of names, but I think the best way to see these is as their interval values. And we're just going to look at each of these box patterns, not in terms of joining up next to each other in key, but as standalone things and what kind of chords that these guys can work over. I'm just going to do these all completely in E shapes here. So let me just put those octave patterns in here, and you can see there's the E-shaped octave. This is going to be another E-shaped octave. And we're assuming that this note here is the root note of the scale. And because these patterns have all changed, then you'll see the intervals that make up each of these scales are going to change as well. You can see that it works out all the way across. So we can think of each scale in its own right as being a pentatonic scale. Now, you've got to remember, penta is 5, tonic equals tones or notes. So 5 notes, that's what a pentatonic is. I've got a cool lesson coming up with pentatonics in the future that you won't want to miss, so make sure you hit that subscribe button. Let's look at the formula for this one, and then we can name them later at the top. The first note that we have is this root here. Now, the next note up is a flat third. Don't think about this in intervals. This is the root note, and this scale degree is going to be the flat third. The interval, though, is the distance between that note and that note. So that's the difference between interval and scale degree. This scale degree is going to be a flat third. We're looking at this next scale degree, and the interval between that is going to be a fourth. Then we get a fifth. You can see that's the same as this humble power chord. And then we get a flat 7. This one here, we call this the bog standard minor pentatonic. We got that minor pentatonic there. What we need to look into here is the notes that are the important notes. And the first notes that we need are the root, the flat third, and the fifth. Those 3 make up the triad. Now, the next note that we can add to add colour to a chord that would go with this would be the 7th, and it happens to be a flat 7. So this minor pentatonic works wonderfully with minor 7 chords. What we can also do is we can utilise this 4 here. Now, the 4, we don't want to think of it as being a 4 in this context of being chords. We wouldn't want to start thinking in suspensions or anything else like that because the third is still present. We need to think of this 4 in its compound value. Here's a cool way of looking at the compound values. 2 is the same as 9. So anytime you see a second, you can think of it as being a 9th. Anytime you see a 4, that could be an 11. And 6 could be a 13. If you've not seen my video on compound intervals, I'll put a link at the end of this video and you can click on that and watch that as well. So here you can see that that 4 then becomes an 11. So we could get a minor 11 chord in there as well, guys. It's completely up to you how you want to play this. So anytime you get those chords come up, this is what you're after. The next one we have is got a root, a major second. So that's a major second there. We have a third. a fifth, and we have a sixth. Now, the cool thing about this one is it's essentially a major scale because it's got a root, it's got a major third. Oh, hang on, that's a fifth. So we've got a root, we've got a third, and we've got a fifth. That is a major triad. So this is telling me what kind of mode that this is going to be. So this is a major pentatonic. What else have we got here? Well, we've got a 2. So we can have major, and just to say that, we could just have straightforward minor as well. Major. We can have major 6 chords, and we can use it with major 9 chords. Now, you might be thinking major 6, well, hang on, Ricky, you just said it was 13 there. It will work with that as well. The 2 and the 9 are interchangeable. This is essentially a major 9 chord. Then this is going to be a major pentatonic. You could get away with just using those because this minor pentatonic, this lives on chords 2, 3, and 6. This lives on chords 1, 4, and 5. But you're going to find that that's a bit bland. Let's move on to the next scale. We've got a root, second, fourth, fifth, flat 7. So what we've got, root, second, fourth, fifth, flat 7. But there's something going on there. The lack of third. Remember, with these two, root, flat third, fifth, root, third, fifth. Here, root, fifth. The third has gone. We have no third at all in this scale, which is interesting because the third gives us an emotional sound. But what we can do is look at the third here. The third going up, we can get a sus4. The third going down, we can get a sus2. So the third is like the pendulum and it swings towards sus2 or sus4. And that can be the same for the flat third as well, because minor chords suspend as well. Here you can see that wonderfully we get both of those there. With this flat 7, that's an interesting colour that we're going to add to that. The flat 7, in my mind, I'm thinking that's either going to be a minor sound or a dominant sound, sort of a bluesy deal going on there. It's not going to be a relaxing sound. The second and the fourth give you an ambiguous sound. So essentially, I'm going to call this suspended pentatonic flat 7. I have heard of this being called the Egyptian scale before, but I don't think calling it something like that gives you an idea of what chords it goes with, because we need to understand the degrees of the scale and how they work with the notes of chords. So the way we can think of this is this can work with suspended chords. It can work with sus2, sus4 chords, but you can also have these flat 7s in here as well. So sometimes you will get a dominant with a sus4. So sus2, sus4, it's completely up to you what you want to do because the third is omitted. That's the thing you have to take care of if you want to keep the sound of this scale in its own right. So you would play a sus2 chord or a sus4 chord and you could play this scale over the top of it. The next one that we have, we've got the root, flat third, fourth, we've got this interval here. We can think of it as being a sharp 5 or a flat 6. In the case of it being a flat 6, then we can apply different theory knowledge to this. It's also got a flat 7, which is a feature of minor 7 chords and also of dominant chords. Now, if you've got a dominant chord and you want to put a sharp 5 in there, you're going to get an augmented sound, and that is really desirable. But then the flat 3 comes along and stuffs that up. But this is the beauty of this. It's going to sound a little bit outside, a little bit vague. And in that case, here's how I would look at this. Because it's got that flat third there, I would think of this as being a minor pentatonic. But we've got to think about that sharp 5 or that flat 6. Now, because the natural minor scale is the root, second, flat third, fourth, flat 6, flat 7, then I would lean towards calling this a minor pentatonic flat 6 mode. And that's a good way of looking at it because it's telling you what it's made of, telling you what's in the tin. So the next one here, we've got a root, second, fourth, fifth, and then we get a 6th. I think that's really interesting that it isn't a flat 7 because if you remember, we had a root, second, fourth, fifth, and then we get the flat 7. In this instance, we're getting the root, second, fourth, fifth, 6th. This one looks very, very similar to this one here. However, before we jump the gun, we've got a root, we've got a 5th, we have no 3rd. So really, this is a suspended pentatonic. That's what I'd think of it. You can think of it as something else. It's okay, the scale police might be along here, but remember guys, this is what it's all about, associating it with chords. If these intervals here exist within the scale, then they're going to have a chord as well because of this thing that I call chord, scale, arpeggio. Those are the only 3 elements of pitch that we have: chords, scales, and arpeggios. They're all the same. This is what I talk about things being synonyms. So we've got root, second, fourth, fifth, sixth. The thing about this is if the third was in there, it would look more like a major scale. So I kind of think of it as being that. But I would still call this a suspended pentatonic because of that major sixth there. I'd think of it more as being a sus4 pentatonic. So that's how I think of those modes there, guys. And you can see what chords could you do with these. You're going to use it with sus chords. Sus2, sus4, we've got that root, we've got the fifth, we've got the sixth in there, so you could use those as well, because remember, this 2, this 4, and this 6, they can become these equivalents also. So if you have chords that have got a root, a fifth, and then you've got a 9th, 11th, and a 13th, you could think of it as those, but you are going to need to put extra colour in there of the 7th and that 3rd in there to really define whether it's a major or a minor tonality, to extend those chords into those compound values. It's very vague. That's the thing about suspended sound. It is a vague sound. Go hell for leather with these, guys. You will enjoy playing them. I would definitely play this over major 6 chords. So major 6 chord comes along, I would probably play that pattern on top of it. It's just a nice one to play. It's a finger friendly pattern. That is the pentatonic modes, guys. They don't have any strange names like Lydian, Mixolydian, or Phrygian or anything else like that. There's a great little website called Ulimo. Go on there and build some chords based on these scale degrees, see what you come up with and play the scale over the top, and you'll have a lot of fun doing that. And that's the main thing at the end of the day, guys.